long, about that big around, something about, and it was real waxy, you know, it's good stuff, and it was good stuff. I walked up, well, anyway, that fellow said, two guys were giving us instructions here, and he said, we're going to teach you today how to make bombs. And they said, we have to use dynamite because the lightning rope is all going overseas. You know what lightning rope was? No. It was a rope they used instead of dynamite, and it came in cakes. I used it some. And anyway, it was good stuff. You could take that rope, and if your tree was 20 inches around, make 20 wraps around that, touch it off, and just cut that tree right off.
Really?
That's what it was, white lightning rope. Anyway, I was using dynamite, and the fellow said, does anyone here know how to use dynamite or ever used it? I said, I did. You're the one we want. They come up here and make a bomb. And they had wire and nails and rubber bands and stuff like that, you know, and fuse and caps. So I went up, picked up a stick of dynamite, went over and laid it on the stump, took out my bayonet, started cutting in two. Man, you talk about a fuss. You're not going to cut that, are you? Even the instructors thought it might blow. I said, sure, it won't hurt anything. Just like cutting a biscuit. I said, as long as it's fresh powder, it won't blow. I said, you can throw this in the fire, it'll burn, but it won't blow. Well, they couldn't believe that. I said, that's the way it is. Anyway, I finished cutting it, I found a stick, and a piece of about that long, the stick of dynamite there. Near the top where it was hot, you could see the powder. I pushed a hole through it, and then down the other end at an angle. And then I took a piece of fuse about so long, put a cap on it, squeezed it down, ran it through there and down into that piece. Then I got some wire and nailed and put around it with rubber band. I said, has anybody got a match? Oh my God, you're not going to like that, are you? I said, what's it for? That's why I made it. I said, you know, it won't blow. And what I should have done is taken a piece of fuse about that size and lit it and showed them how slow it burns. You know, I mean, it burned, but I forgot that. Anybody got a light and match? Nobody. Turn around and look. The whole company was about 50 feet away then. Before they were in there. Finally, somebody came up with a lighter, and even the guys who were training me, they went out with the other guys then, you know. And I lit that, and threw it, and it worked just perfect. Oh boy, you know more about powder than us. How about you training with us? You know. I said, fine with me. I thought it would be an hour. You know? But next morning, I reported out, and the runner came again. Smith, Captain wants to see you. So I took off and went in there, and he said, he had my papers then, and I was the CO, objector. How did you get here? I said, well, they just shipped me out. Well, I can't have you here. Infantry camp. He said, I don't know how you got here, but I know. I knew the guy did it when the officers went around. He said, I can't keep you here. He said, I will tell you what I want you to do. I want you to go see the chaplain. And then when you get through, you come back and talk to me. I want to see you. So I said, yes, sir. I turned around and left. And I walked down to the chapel and went in, and some orderly introduced me to the chaplain. What do you want, soldier? He was real stern, sitting up on his mount. And I said, I don't want anything, sir. What are you doing here? I said, the captain sent me to see you. About what? I said, well, sir, I'm an objector. He jumped out of his chair and said, pointed at me and said, you're a liar, you're a coward. You're a coward. He said, I've got 2 boys overseas killing on the enemy they can, and I'm proud of them. I said, that's not what Christ taught. And he said, oh, I said, that's not the way I feel about it. He said, I can show you in this Bible where God killed millions of people. I said, yes, under the Old Testament and the law, you can see where he killed a lot of enemies of God's people. But I said, that's not the teachings of Christ, and he reached over and got the Bible, held it up. You mean snot-nosed kid like you can tell me what's in this book? He said, I've made my living on it for 31 years. I said, that's your problem, sir. I said, you're a false prophet, taking money for preaching. Boy, he came out of his chair then, but that time he said, get out, get out! So I got up. And I felt better going back than I did going down. I really feel the Lord was helping me a little bit there. That I wasn't bashful at all, I told him. I think there was a phone call between that man and the captain before I got there. Because I walked in and the captain, well, they took me to see the captain. He said, what did you hear? What did they tell you, Smith? I said, he didn't tell me anything, sir. And he sat there a while and said, how far would you go in the battlefield without a gun? I said, I'd go any place with you, Captain.
Okay.
He just told me because the corpsmen don't carry a gun all the time. They're out there. He sat there a while and made me nervous. And he said, I believe you. I believe you would. He says, from now on, because I can't keep you here, I've got to ship you out. He's written, as long as you're here on this base, you come in and work for me and you don't have to go out in the field. That was pretty nice. So I did.